Can you hear me okay?
Hello, folks. Welcome to Holding On with Holder, where I talk to interesting people about interesting topics. My name is Steve Holder, and I am your host. My guest this evening is Matt Makrom. He is a candidate for U.S. Congress in the 1st District of Tennessee. Hello, Matt.
What's going on? Thanks for having me on.
Glad to have you on. So you're going to be U.S. Congress in the 1st District of Tennessee.
I don't really want to, but I'm offering myself up as sacrifice.
So tell us a little bit about you and where do you come from? Why do you want to do what you're trying to do?
Yeah, so my name is Matt Makrom, of course. I'm a registered nurse. I work over at the VA in Johnson City. Um, I am 30 years old as of this year. I have worked a variety of different positions as a nurse. I graduated in 2014 from Carson Newman University. With a bachelor's in nursing, of course. But so I've worked at a variety of different hospitals. I've worked at Johnson City Medical Center. I've worked over in Sevierville. I've worked at Jefferson Memorial in Jefferson City. I've floated over to Unicoi, not the new hospital. It looks pretty nice, but I've worked all over and done a bunch of different things. And I have recently, well, we'll say recently, over the past several years, become more acutely aware of the things that are prevalent in our country. Things that people don't typically talk about. You have to actually be paying attention. It's an effort thing. So anyway, long story short, I used to be a liberal, and I gradually became less so through my evolution as a nurse. And now I'm at the point where I feel like someone has to if no one is going to speak, is no one going to speak for the people and say the things that need to be said. Then if no one else is going to do it, then I'm saying that I'll do it. So that's a basic rundown of where I'm coming from. Thanks for that question, though.
So do you enjoy talking about politics?
It's really funny. Whenever people ask me that, I'll continuously talk about it, but I really don't enjoy it. I'd rather just be, ignorant like, half of the other people are, and just not have to worry about it and not think about it at all. But I feel like as an American, it's something it's if you told our founding fathers that how few people actually even vote that can, they would be turning in their graves.
Yeah. And of course, you're going to have to take so you're running as Republican, correct?
Yeah, so what actually has to happen is I will hopefully, God willing, have a Republican officer, so officer of the Republican Party, endorse me as bona fide Republican because I don't have a voting record and I'm not going to try to pretend like I do. I voted for Trump in the last election. And I voted for the Trump in the election before that. But before that, I voted for Obama, unfortunately. And I I don't have the record, so I'm not going to try to try to force the issue. I know that I can get an endorsement from a Republican officer, and that's the route I'm going to be taking.
So you're going to be running, I guess, Diana Harshbarger.
Yeah, I think that she's probably a really nice woman. I haven't met her yet. I'm sure that maybe at some point I will, but there's some things, some issues that I have with, what she's been doing or what she hasn't done, maybe. But yeah, she seems like a really nice lady.
Well, I can tell you from experience, she's a hard one to beat.
Yeah, any kind of tips or tricks that you have, feel free to let me know.
Obviously, I don't know any, or I would have won.
Well, I think it's probably a little bit more complicated than that. I know that she almost raised $2.5 million for, multi-way split primary. So that's a little bit unsettling, maybe. I feel like maybe.
Am I running? No.
Oh, no. Well, not unsettling for you, but that's a lot of money to raise for just a representative primary,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
with with so many different splits. I mean, she barely won,
Mhm.
so. But I mean, I don't have anything against her. I just think that she needs to be more vocal. I think that she needs to do more. She needs to be a servant leader. I know half of her Twitter pictures are with shaking hands with local business leaders and people, the majority of people who, not normal people who voted her in office. So hate to throw her under the bus on that one, but it's, we need to get back to servant leadership. And you know if we're going to be honest here, the local state business issues, that's all dealt with by the state. They are the ones who make the state more favorable to business or not. So I don't really understand that.
Well, Diana won last year by spending lots of money, raising lots of money, and having the right connections. She spent all of her time impressing the Republican elite, let's say. She went all around to all the right people and shook all the right hands and made all the right promises to the same right people. And that's what got her elected. She'll do it again.
Yeah, I've talked to a political I don't know what he does exactly, but he was saying, yeah, she was planted there. She's gonna plant her butt there for the next until she's 80. She's gonna be the next Nancy Pelosi as far as length of time. But it's a career. I mean, she's not planning on leaving it ever. So yeah, I think that the Republican Party's got a whole bunch of stuff going on. Hopefully, I've got some people who are going to give me some dirt on the Republican Party, actually, uh, and we're going to bring that out. So I know a lot of people are probably not going to like that.
You mean dirt like the Chinese drugs that her and her husband?
Oh, no, it is nothing like the fact that she was the only board member of her husband's corporation, which was a pharmacy also, and she had no idea over the 8 years that
Yeah,
that he had made over $100,000 extra. It's kind of funny because she also owns a pharmacy. You'd wonder that maybe she would notice, like, why is your pharmacy making $100,000 more a year than mine? But that's just speculation. She denied it, and he was sentenced. Um, so he paid his. I don't know if he actually went to jail. Did he?
he went to prison, I think, for 4 years.
Yeah, and it's really funny that story kind of only got out after, like, right, either maybe a week before the actual primary ended.
That's
Um,
not true. I brought it up repeatedly the whole
oh,
time
did
I
you?
was running. I did.
So
I
yeah,
said,
see, I wasn't paying attention to it, and just whenever I kind of researched her after she won, as a shoe-in if you win the Republican nomination.
yeah,
Yeah, and I didn't actually see. I mean, I wasn't paying attention. Honestly, I wasn't super involved with politics at that point. Um, except for other than becoming more conservative and stuff like that. I wasn't really looking at the background of the representative for this district, but now, I mean, seeing, like, especially that story, I mean, she ran on sticking it to China. It's like, oh, that's hilarious.
yeah. Yeah, they were buying illegal drugs from China, selling them at a higher price as American drugs for a big
Yeah,
profit. I
yeah.
brought that up
So
numerous times. Blair Washington brought it up. I mean, it was all over the news. I mean, it wasn't anything secret.
really, I mean, that's really, I hadn't heard it until after she won, until I started, and then I looked at her.
Well, you
But
can
yeah,
Google it after a while, and you can find out plenty of information on it. There's plenty of it out there.
yeah, yeah, I've made sure to download those pages, actually, because I don't want them to magically disappear, in the future.
Yeah. So, what what really made you decide that you are the person to get into it and to do this job? I mean, why you? I mean, why could you not just support somebody else?
I could, I mean, maybe I will. I'm gonna wait to see what God shows me. I'm very much, like, open to whatever God, if God tells me he doesn't want me to do this, then, so be it. But at this point, um, I I don't want to do it. Okay. That's what I was kind of saying earlier. I don't want to do it, but I'm one of those people who it's like, okay, well, if we're doing something and no one else is going to do it right, then I'll do it. And because I'd rather do that than have to, have a bad outcome, or you know what I mean? It's a kind of a, I mean, it's a leadership mentality that it's like I'd rather just be complacent if someone else is going to steer the boat in the right direction, but I don't feel like that.
Yeah,
So, I'm a nurse, and I haven't killed anyone, and you know,
that's good.
uh, deal deal with a lot more acute issues, and have to do what's good for people just constantly for a 13-hour shift. It's basically you're making conscious decisions to help other people for a living. And if I don't want to do it, I feel like maybe I could be a good choice. It's what's hilarious to me is that they keep electing lawyers for for any kind of political seats, and they're the only career. If you look, they're the only career that has jokes constantly about killing them all. Like, why is that? That doesn't seem like a smart, rational thing for me. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, what do you think the minimum wage should be, Matt?
Hmm. Well, I am a firm believer in supply and demand. I just came back from South Carolina. I was driving up there visiting a friend, and one of the gas stations I stopped at outside of Columbia, it was a rural area. It said it's 15 to $16 an hour starting. And I was just like, man, whenever I started as a nurse, I was only making $18 an hour, and that's after 4 years. Well, I took a victory lap, 5 years of undergrad and student loans, and just got a new, or got as cheap as car as I could, um, and paying for rent and everything. That's as a new nurse. I was like, man, you really have to deal with a whole bunch of stuff. So I feel like people have to get back to the supply and demand. Like right now, minimum wage is going to go up no matter what because people aren't working right now, and these businesses they're looking for workers. So then you have coupled with that, the inflation because of all this crazy spending. Um, you know, the the minimum wage is I think it should be very much based on your whatever the cost of living index is in that place, because it's all, of course, if you go to San Francisco, if you have $3,000, you can get a studio apartment maybe, and then in Johnson City, for what, at least a couple years ago, $550 you can get a 2 bedroom 1 bath college style dorm apartment. And then our food is fairly cheap. Beef is going up, but is was it two at Aldi is two 89 or a pound or something for the 80%. Anyway, um, the thing that I think that it should be the judge of that, it should be your locality. I mean, there's no one size fits all, which is also why I don't think the federal government should be making decisions for every community.
And a US congressman, as you probably know, makes $174,000 a year. You
Yes, he
think that's
does.
too much?
I think, if I'm sure you're probably familiar with Friedman, as far as economics. Um, the I think that there should be a risk reward system for them. I think that their their money should be based on how good of a job they do. They're basically, running the country. If you do bad, you have a balanced budget that's bad, then you should your incentive should decrease, because they also get $1 million a year as a representative to pay for just staff and incidentals, you know So yeah, I feel like that they should, I mean, they should be, their job is not that hard. I know it's very busy, but I mean, how hard is your job? You're literally just up there to talk for the people that you represent. I don't understand.
So you think you'd be working a lot less than you are now? Are you working more
So
now than you would be?
probably not as far as my job, but I'm also in grad school also. So every week I'm doing about 8 to 10 or whatever I can squeeze in hours for primary care provider, and I've got a year left in nurse practitioner school. Um, so either way, come next August, we'll say, I'm either going to be a nurse practitioner. Hopefully, I'll be a nurse practitioner no matter what, and then if I won, the race, then you would be an elected official, and then I can be a nurse practitioner afterwards. But I don't like, being a politician is not what my end goal is. I don't want to be a politician for a long time. I'm a big fan of term limits, and as far as, yeah, compounded work stress, as far as right now compared to what I would be working in Congress. Oh, it's easy peasy.
So do you have a family? Do you have a wife and kids?
No, so that's another thing about me. I feel like God might have placed me in this position because I don't have a wife, I don't have kids. I don't work for a business or organization that can just fire me for any reason. I work for the federal government, and their union. So um, I feel like I am in a prime position to take whatever people are going to throw at me. Of course, I've got a past. I would definitely say that I'm a Christian person, and I forgive, and I've never been one to be without sin. So, you know, I'm not going to try to claim that, but I don't have. I know a lot of people who would be in this position would be prone to attacks on family, and issues like that. I don't have any kids to worry about going to school and getting bullied at school for the beliefs. I don't have a wife who's worried about her job. And I feel like I'm just in a position to take that brunt, and also if they're going to play the minority card, I mean, I'm half Egyptian, so I don't know how small of a minority uh, the Middle Eastern faction, because there's no actual Middle Eastern thing on the on that on the ethnicity. It's always Caucasian because they're technically Caucasian. But I've seen a lot of other ethnicities who complain about being marginalized. It's like, well, how many of you guys? I as far as I'm aware, I was the only Middle Eastern kid in Jefferson County whenever I was going to school, but I never once thought of it as a negative thing.
So how do you think our governor has handled the COVID-19 crisis?
Hmm. So, I think Governor Lee, um, I think he means well. I think that I was very surprised when he decided not to lift the mask ban and he left it up to the counties. I felt like that was a prime opportunity for him to actually, make a stand and, you know, kind of back off of the encroachment on state rights or freedoms, sorry, American freedoms. And also, I thought that I don't know. Had heard that he possibly had words against a bill that was going through the Tennessee state legislature that was going to require paper balloting instead of using the machine, paper balloting with traditional methods of counting. And then I know that bill got removed. I felt like I read an article maybe somewhere that said that he was going to veto it. But as far as everything else, I'm going to go back and say that every single one of these governors is responsible for violating every single one of these people's civil rights, but also too, I know that the state rights are, um, they actually supersede the U.S. Constitution, and the states can actually encroach on the amendment rights that people try to say that applies to every single locality, or is my First Amendment rights. Well, the federal government's the only one that's beholden to the First Amendment rights unless it's in your state's constitution. Um, and I think a lot of people don't understand that. So I'll give him a little bit of leeway and say that maybe the decisions that he's made, they're not against our American rights, but I think people need to pay close attention to what the Tennessee state authorities do, because they have a lot of power that people don't realize.
Yeah. So what do you think of capitalism? Some people say it's time to get rid of it. What do you think?
What would be the alternative?
Well, some people say socialism.
Okay, so I really like the idea of helping people, um, and I think that that's something that America has been historically really good at, and I just have a hard time believing that taking from other people and redistributing it to people who didn't actually earn it, because that's the basis for capitalism is you know you do something and you get something in return. It's market theory, and whenever you just start saying, "Oh, well, no, everyone gets the same," or you start taking from people who are doing well, it removes the incentive to do well. All you have to do is, look at Russia and see what happened with them. Whenever you have just state government, I work for the federal government, and I know that the incentive structure is a lot different. I'm not going to say anything bad about it, but I can tell you firsthand that when there's no actual incentive to do well day to day, based on profit loss, um, that it unfortunately the human condition has to have incentive there. It has to, and you can see that in every situation in history that has been tried otherwise. Um, but and also capitalism is a great form of voting, as far as what what a country wants, or what a country needs. You actually get to control what's what's popular, what your country represents, those kind of things. You can't do that whenever you have a socialist or uh, communist system. You look at the CCP and they control everything that gets out of their country. They control exactly what people think, and that's not for America, and that's not. It's not the most profitable way. Obviously, if you look at the United States, we've been number one for how long now?
Are we number one now?
I I assume so. Are we not?
Do you think Donald Trump made America great again?
Unfortunately, his good decisions were lessened by the way that he was perceived by people. He was a very inflammatory person, um, but a very strong leader, and that's what I think that America needs. I think America needs a strong leader. Maybe some of the things he said, could be brushed up a little bit. I don't think that he was saying any lies really, unless there's any that you can point to specifically. But he's a very abrasive person, and obviously he abraded people, and his good policy decisions were overshadowed by his notoriety to me.
So what about January the 6th, the insurrection? What do you think about that?
Yeah, it was the worst plan, or it was the worst insurrection, as far as, worst as in poorly thought out or poorly executed insurrection in the history of the world. Um, you know, how many videos have we seen of what looks like staging, of cameras, and police officers standing there directing people through velvet ropes, to on tour of the facility. We have no answers on the Ashley Babbitt case. What's going on? It's really just, it seemed, and then you have the police chief of DC refusing National Guard presence because they say they have no credible evidence. Then you have the FBI saying that they received multiple uh, pieces of information saying that it was going to be violent. It's really just a big mess.
So are you trying to downplay it like it wasn't really a serious thing?
No, it was definitely a serious thing because of the way that it was. You know, all the prevention aspects were not there, that didn't exist. So it just potentiated an event that didn't need to happen. So it was, whenever you get people riled up, and a lot of those people, of course, if they're there, then they're very passionate anyway. So it was just a very easy way to portray and make these people, give them enough rope to hang themselves, basically.
But Trump is the reason they were there. He encouraged them to come.
Yes, sir, he did. And he also said that they were going to peacefully and patriotically make their voices heard. And then he also told everyone to go home in peace. So, I know that narrative, people don't like to hear it, but also he was in the middle of talking whenever they stormed the Capitol, technically. So, I don't, that whole spin on it is, a lot of people try to push it, but if you actually look back at the facts, he didn't actually do it. He's an inflammatory person, and again, they all the preventative methods that could have been used at the Capitol were oddly, discounted.
So you're still a big Trump supporter then, right?
Um, yeah, I think he's a good guy. I think he's what the country needed as far as policies. Of course, it caused a huge division point for our people, and that's the downside. But he was a strong leader. A lot of people are afraid of that. I think that he did a great job, and I think that he should have won the second election.
So you don't think he did win the second election? Some people say he did. He says he did.
What do you say?
I say as a matter of history, he lost.
Right. What are your thoughts on it? Turn the tables on you.
He lost. He's a
Yeah.
traitor. He should have lost. He needs to be in prison.
Okay. I can respect that. Um, I think that what has happened though, for sure, is that exposed has been the process in which we vote, like in the lack of security methods and the lack of transparency in each of the state. Of course, each of the states are guaranteed their own ability to run their own elections. So I think that's the most important thing to come out of it. I'm not going to say that Trump won or Biden won. I mean, of course, Biden won. He's obviously president, but um, I think it just shed a whole bunch of light on some things, some issues that we need to solve before the next election.
Okay. Do you think Biden is doing a good job?
I think that Biden has Alzheimer's, and as a nurse who has taken care of people with Alzheimer's, I think that it's probably a likely diagnosis. I don't know. It's not my medical professional opinion, but it's in my personal opinion, he seems like someone that I've taken care of in the hospital with that kind of dementia. It doesn't have to, they
Uh,
don't necessarily have to not know where they're at, you know but compared to just some videos I've seen of him talking previously, before, a year ago, 2 years ago, it just seems to be an issue.
But I didn't ask you to diagnose him. I asked you if you think he's doing a good job.
I think that no, he's not doing a good job.
Okay. So what do you think about the two Trump impeachments? Do you think that was a waste of time and money, or was that a witch hunt, as he said, or what?
If I'm not mistaken, the whole Russia collusion thing was based on the Steele dossier, and that was discounted before the United States started investigating. It was discounted by MI6 and saying that Steele was not a trustworthy source. And then a FBI lawyer altered that email, and that's what initiated the whole investigation. And that if it started by falsehood, I they ruled and they made their decision, but they didn't convict him. So then you have the January 6th, where they're gonna try to convict him and impeach him, and he's just he I don't see how you can say that he caused an insurrection whenever he's again he didn't change the way he speaks. He was just doing his thing. But again, it's the oddness of the security and police detail that just allowed some people to, a faction of people that can be attributed to Trump supporters, were allowed to let their emotions flare up and drive them to do things that they might not have done normally, and then have no preventative efforts. I don't think that you can blame him for that. I think that he was just doing what he always does.
He was definitely doing what he always does. I agree with you.
Exactly.
Well, what do you think about the present state of the world, Matt, as a whole?
I think China is a mess. I think that, you know, the things that China is talking about, I think that we're very close to the verge of war, due to the fact that Taiwan is, a quote province, or a renegade province from China. Um, and that I did a video on this recently. I can't remember exactly what the stats were, but I mean, a very significant, like 65-70% of our advanced chips are made in Taiwan, right? So those chips are custom made for places like Apple or IBM, and they're super specific. It's very hard to make money in the industry. It's very hard to make the factories in this industry, because these chips, these processors, or I mean the circuits, are on the scale of viruses and bacteria. They're so tiny. And again, it takes years to set these factories up, and it takes billions and billions of dollars to do it. And to be profitable at it is a trade secret almost. So the most advanced chips that we have for processing come from Taiwan. So if China, they're sending fighter jets and bombers and stuff, to mess with the line of division for Taiwan, or whatever the China Sea border is. They are just to see what the United States is going to do. They're just agging us on. Eventually, what's going to happen is they're actually going to do it, and then first of all, we won't know that it's a training exercise or not, and then after it's already happened, then we're going to have to sit there and think, what are we going to do? Are we going to support our ally in against China, which would be, I don't think they're going to use any nuclear weapons, but it would certainly be a huge conflict. I don't know if it would be a world war, but it would be a huge conflict, and it would be very conventional, because they would avoid the use of nukes. But I think that is the most concerning thing that's going on right now, on top of China's blatant, um, you know, uh, violations of human rights against the Uyghur Muslims, and organ harvesting from criminal, or well, supposedly criminal folks in their prison system, where their penal system is much more strict. They have the death penalty for much lesser crimes. So I think that's the most concerning part. But also at the same time, it's very concerning to me that our Christian population has decreased. If you go to 1940s, America, 87% of Americans said that they were Christian. Now it's less than 50 that even say that. And I know for a fact that most people who say that they're Christian are not. At least as far as I'm aware. I don't know their heart. Let me take that back. I don't know their heart, so I can't say that exactly. But as far as following the lead of Jesus and you know, trying to live a selfless life, it doesn't seem that way. And that's I think that's probably one of the also most destructive things that we have to deal with today.
Can we talk about racism?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay. Do you think we have a racism problem in America?
I absolutely think that we do not have a racist problem in this country. I think that what's happened now is people have been more acutely aware of race to use it as a dividing point. But like I was saying earlier, I was probably the only Middle Eastern. My first name's Ahmed. So in case you didn't know that, my second name is Matthew. So, or my middle name. So that's what I don't speak any Arabic. I don't have any Middle Eastern culture. I've mostly been raised in East Tennessee since I think it's since I was 3. So uh, I'm definitely Tennesseeized, and I feel like every once in a while you'll get a sense of like maybe someone that's just very ignorant is thinks negatively of you because of how you look. But that's very few and far between to say that the system is the system that guarantees equal rights to people regardless of their skin color and their religion and their gender. It's very I don't understand where people get off saying it's a systemically racist system.
Well, what if I told you that our founding fathers put up a system where only rich white men could vote, and they kept it that way for as long as they could? Does that sound racist or sexist or classist? Do you see anything wrong with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that they set up a perfect system to begin with. I think that it was something that we, had to gradually move towards. And I mean, it's still not perfect by any means, but principles are perfect, not people. So I think that the system that they set up is a lot or very largely based on a system that they were accustomed to, which is, you had the monarchy and the parliament. And they definitely verbalized that they didn't think that everyone should vote. And, unless you're forcing people to vote in the United States, that's kind of how it works. People who are interested at least enough to make an effort to go vote can go vote. And that at least means that they're at least somewhat cognizant that elections even exist. And we still only get about less than half of the people that vote. So I think that when they set up the country like that, they were not, because most people had to, they had to work. People forget about America's culture. People used to work, 60 hours, 70 hours a week and didn't have a day off, and they lived at the poverty level. They were just struggling to have food to eat. And I think that the founding fathers, of course, they were mostly all wealthy, or I think all of them were wealthy. Um, and they, of course, were white because they were, I mean, of course, coming off of the same. I mean, nothing really happened other than we cut ourselves off from England. So, all the business structures and everything were carried over. It's not like they just came up with them out of nowhere. But I don't think you could hold it against them for, the base rules that they had laid in place that, you know, did not include the average person, because if you go back in the text, the founding fathers assumed that not everyone was familiar with politics, and that why would you want you don't want mob rule. If you look at mob rule in history, it doesn't work. So I think that's a good enough answer.
So you don't think it was at all racist that only white people could vote?
Again, I think it was carried over from the current system that they had. That I don't think that it was different times, it's like the same situation if you ask someone, hey, if you were born in 1940s and or born in the 1920s in Germany and you join the military, would you be a Nazi? Be like, no, of course. But, people are exist in different time periods. You only know what you know, so and I think racism is something that's taught. So I don't think that you just naturally inherently think that, because if you were to naturally just develop it, then you would think that black people are better at everything because you got Ben Carson, who's one of the smartest surgeons in the top surgeon in the world for neurosurgery. And you got LeBron James, the best basketball player in the world. You got Tiger Woods, the best golf player arguably in the world. You got, you could keep going on. You got the Williams sisters, best in history, best arguable tennis players. You got Floyd Mayweather, arguably the best boxer, Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson. I mean, I could keep going on. So it just doesn't, I don't know what else to say.
Why do you think the founding fathers were right not to let women vote?
I also think that that was something that was carried over. I don't, it was, just kind of a culture thing. Of course, women had different traditions and those kind of things previously. So not a lot of them were educated on politics or even allowed to go to school. So I definitely don't agree in any kind of inequality amongst genders or races. I think that, again, if we've moved forward, we've developed. So women's suffrage was a success. They now vote. And same thing with uh, minorities, they're able to vote. So I again, I don't think that I think people give them trouble over saying, oh, well, you guys didn't make a perfect system right now, but people have to remember that they were actually cutting themselves off. It was like, okay, we're out here by ourselves. And then they cut themselves off from the strongest nation in the world, so there's a lot of stress going on. You're probably not going to go through and nitpick every single little thing, or what you could be. It's like, what can we do now?
So who do you think should be allowed to vote now?
Oh, I think American citizens should be able to vote. I feel like that's an easy question. I don't think that people who are not citizens should be able to vote. Every single person who's American citizen that's over the age of 18, because I mean, heck, they have to be 18 to even smoke a cigarette. I feel like that maybe even be too young of an age, but we'll roll with it right now.
Do you think that people should automatically get to vote, or they have to go through a process to register?
I think again that goes back to what the founding fathers said as far as wanting people who are were concerned enough to at least do a little bit of education or put in a little bit of investment of their time to be able to vote. I think that it's a very base element. Pretty much if you go and get a new driver's license, you're registered to vote. If you do this or that, you're registered to vote. So I I think that everyone who cares enough to vote should be able to vote. I know Australia, they'll give you a fine if you don't vote because they have a 90 something percent voting rate. But that causes people who don't care to vote. Like there's plenty of people who just don't care and they don't want to even be involved. So why would you want those people's opinion? It doesn't make any sense unless you can sway them one way or the other more easily, um, one way or the other. But I think that also just sending mass mail-in ballots, I think that's ridiculous. If people can go and vote during the middle of a civil war or during any other stressful time in the United States history, especially whenever you didn't even have vehicles, then I think that absolutely everyone who is able to vote can go vote. There's plenty of people who go. There's positions that people go out and find people who are in the hospital and they'll process their paperwork, those kind of things. That's acceptable. But to just blanket mail out, that's getting all the people who, again, we don't care what their opinion is because they have no political opinion. They don't understand enough, at least to invest the energy to vote. Then why, it doesn't make any sense.
Now, it sounds like you're contradicting yourself, Matt. You said that every American over the age of 18 should be allowed to vote, but then you
Right.
said they should have to know something about politics.
No, I said that they should be able to vote, but that doesn't mean that you should register them to vote and send them a ballot. That's on them. If they care enough, if they're an American citizen, that's the first requirement. If you're an American citizen, you're eligible to vote. But that doesn't mean that we should just register you to vote and, let you just come in or send you a thing in the mail asking you who you voted for, because you still, just because you're a citizen doesn't mean you care enough to vote.
So you say every citizen should be allowed to vote over 18. What about people that have been in prison and they have felonies on their record? A lot of them can't vote now. Should they be allowed to vote?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question I haven't thought about. I think that people who have paid their time for crime, they should be eligible to vote, because that's part of our system. Is you went to jail, you hopefully served your time and you paid your dues, you should be able to vote again. Now, if we can change gears and start talking about the Second Amendment rights, I don't necessarily, I don't, if you're, a violent criminal, I don't know necessarily you should be given a gun. Um, but it is an infringement on your Second Amendment rights, but that's more of a state issue. And I think that the state should be allowed, but at least based on our founding principles, to be able to rule on that. I don't think that's a federal government thing that we should be dealing with. But yeah, I think that if you're asking me specifically about the voting rights, I think that if you paid your time, then you should be eligible to vote again.
I agree. I agree with you on that. Um, so do you think there's such a thing as white supremacy or white privilege? Is that really a thing?
So I think that it's a mindset that people have. I think that there can be a white privilege if people assume that there's a white privilege. It's like, I don't know, if you believe anything and enough people believe it, then you can create something out of nothing. But as far as white supremacy, I think that that's very controlled, confined areas. I don't know a white supremacist. I don't know that I've ever met a white supremacist. And it's funny because, you'll hear the FBI say that white supremacy is the number one threat to United States, security. And I just have a hard time believing that. Whenever I still have yet in East Tennessee, where it's, only 10% or 15% black, that so many people are racist that I haven't met them, or maybe they're just such good actors that I haven't been able to identify them.
So you say you don't know anybody that's racist?
At least not that I can tell, and not that I've, ever had I take that back. I had one person that I took care of as a nurse. I took care of them, and she was, I think she was probably in her 90s. But yeah, she asked if she was just very snippy. And then, of course, she assumes that I'm Mexican, and, proceeds to, have a conversation in a condescending way. Those kind of people, I can kind of get it. I can kind of understand that they're racist, but it's more of like a, oh, bless their heart thing now. It's not like in the 50s where you have millions of members of the KKK.
So what about the KKK and these white supremacist groups? Do you think a lot of them really supported and still support Trump? Do you feel any kin to them people?
So, you can support whoever you want. I think that these conservative group like the KKK that's racist. I think that it's easy for them to go and back someone who's a strong leader because they like that strength. Uh, and they also like to be inflammatory. Obviously, they say very inflammatory things, and they try to stir up trouble. So It was very easy. I mean, it's very easy for you to just assume that they're going to, support President Trump, but President Trump categorically, condemned white supremacists and white supremacy groups. And it's funny. A lot of people try to still say that he supported whatever groups of white supremacy. He said there was good people on both sides. He also condemned them in that same speech, the white supremacists. But again, I think it's more about the strength and leadership, and Trump did exude a sense of nationalism, but all you have to do is look at, white nationalists. That's part of their thing. They're white but nationalists. So unfortunately, that's a candidate they get behind.
So what do you think about the Black Lives Matter movement? Not the organization, but the movement. Is that necessary?
If we're going back again to all the superstars and best people and categories, that if so many of them, such a large percentage, it's overrepresented. If you assume that even 20%, I don't know how much, it's around 30% of 20, is it 20 or 30% of the population in the United States is black? Do you know?
I don't remember. I couldn't tell you.
Does that sound about right?
It sounds like something like that. Yeah, 20 to 30. Yeah, and yeah,
So
I'm guessing. Yeah.
yeah. So for that small of a population, the percentage of them that become ultra wealthy is just, I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, it's higher. You're much more likely to be a super athlete or a highly paid sports athlete in most major sports if you're black, as opposed to white. So in a systemically racist system, that wouldn't happen. So the Black Lives Matter, it's a very small percentage of unarmed black people who get shot every year, by police officers. I think it was like something like 3 or 4 last year. And then the number of unarmed white people, is 15, 20. I think that's a somewhat accurate number around that area, but much larger, maybe 4 or 5 times larger. Um, so of course, Black Lives Matter. I mean, of course, I never have once in my life thought that a black life didn't matter. And it's very, very intelligent play on words to create an organization that is called Black Lives Matter, and then also created a movement where people are going to get their emotions involved that say Black Lives Matter. Of course, Black Lives Matter. And then you have people who are saying all lives matter. And of course, what that's going to do, that's contradicting the Black Lives Matter movement, because Black Lives Matter so much more than whatever all lives matter right now. It's just a very play, or a very funny play, or an intelligent play on that, and it gets people confused. So then now you have organization doing things that a movement doesn't know about, and people are getting involved for the wrong reasons. It's just, I mean, it's a very intelligent move to disrupt the United States.
So you think that's what they're doing, just trying to disrupt things?
They is in who?
Black Lives Matter movement.
I've read a couple of things about, people getting out of the organization, because of values that they found out later. I think one of the founders for BLM, he decided to get out of it because he found out they were more interested in money, and then you have the colors lady, one of the founders of BLM. She has, four different houses. Um, and I guess maybe you could say that she needs those houses because she's working all over the United States. But at the end of the day, it's hard for people to differentiate if you say Black Lives Matter and then the Black Lives Matter organization, because they think that if you are not for Black Lives Matter, either way, they're not familiar with the separation for the most part. So I think that's something most people don't know.
So let me give you a chance now to talk to all the people in the first district of Tennessee. Why should they vote for Matt Makrom?
Well, it's, if we were trying to drain the swamp, trying to get someone who has no idea how, you know, how it works with having people to be beholden to, or I've never had any experience at all in politics, which it's kind of it might be a bad idea in the first place, but also it's not something that I want to do. So I want to be able to serve the people. I feel very privileged to live here. I feel very privileged to have all the wonderful things that I have in my life that, you know, I've been able to achieve things in my life, and that's only something that it's only America where you can just literally come here and have nothing in your pocket and then become a business owner or be a doctor. I mean, that happens all the time in the United States. It doesn't happen other places. A lot of people don't realize that. So anyway, if you're tired of the whole corrupt politics thing and you want someone who's going to actually speak for the people he represents and say the things that a lot of people don't want to say because they're stepping on toes. I don't have any people whose toes I care not to step on. If Jesus says, I mean, not Jesus says, but Paul says, to hate evil, you know, and that's, if you stay focused on that, I feel like you can't lose. And that's kind of my primary focus is, you know, if God's leading me to this and then the people around think it's a good thing, then I'm more than happy to sacrifice my time and dedicate myself to making sure that, the people of this district are represented regardless of any special interest or anything like that. I think that's, again, the service leadership is so important. And I definitely know that I'm a servant, and I know that um, at least God has led me to this point. And if it's something in the future, then that God will lead me there. And I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show. It is very, very engaging, and you're a great host. Obviously, you've got a lot of episodes.
What do you want to tell people about your website?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So it's just a very bare bones website. It's www.mattforcongress.vote. And we also have a podcast that we do usually once every week where we just kind of discuss issues. It's the Micmac MCMAK podcast.com. And we're on YouTube. But yeah, if you want to kick over there and donate some money, I don't know that anyone's donated any money to the campaign yet. So you know I think it's a GoFundMe page, whatever. But we're gonna just keep doing what we're gonna do. So check out the page or not, like me on or follow me on LinkedIn. We just started a Twitter, and they just kind of locked me out because they said I was following too many people. So once we get out of Twitter jail, I guess we'll keep working on there. But yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity, Steve.
Well, glad to have you. Thank you so much for giving me your time and attention. And maybe later on in the campaign, we'll come back and do it again and revisit some things that may be fresh on your mind and fresh on everybody else's mind. So thank you again, Matt, for being here with me, and I appreciate you, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, sir.
And folks, thanks for tuning in to Holding On with Holder. Please subscribe to my channel. Feel free to share this video all over social media. And if you're in the 1st District of Tennessee, Matt would love to have your vote. Thanks again, brother. You have a good evening.
Hey, you too. Thank you.